A wealthy man notices a young street musician performing near his office, captivated by her talent. As he learns about her struggles and sacrifices, her story changes his perspective. But when her true identity is revealed, it shocks him and the entire city. This powerful tale of kindness and resilience will leave you inspired. Every morning, as Daniel Worthington, a well-known investment banker, strode out of his luxury office building in downtown Manhattan, he was greeted by the same scene, a young woman with a weathered guitar, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk, her head bowed slightly as her fingers danced across the strings. Her music was enchanting, delicate yet powerful, filling the air with raw emotion. Passers-by would often stop briefly, tossing a few coins or bills into the open guitar case at her feet, before continuing on their hurried way. At first, Daniel barely noticed her. His days were consumed by meetings, market updates, and the endless pursuit of profit. But over time, the haunting beauty of her melodies began to pierce through his otherwise impenetrable schedule. One day, he found himself lingering by the corner where she played, drawn to the music as if by an invisible force. "You're incredibly talented," Daniel remarked one crisp autumn morning after the musician had finished a soulful rendition of an old classic. The young woman looked up, her piercing blue eyes meeting his for the first time. She was in her early 20s with a face that bore both youthful innocence and the weight of hardship. "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft yet confident. "What's your name?" he asked. "Isabel," she said simply, offering a shy smile. Daniel nodded, noting the faint hint of exhaustion in her expression. "Isabel, why aren't you performing in a concert hall? Your talent deserves a bigger stage than this street corner." Isabel chuckled softly, her fingers strumming an absent tune on the guitar. "Sometimes, life doesn't give you the stage you want, so you make the best of the one you have." Intrigued by her response, Daniel dropped a generous tip into her guitar case. "Do you mind if I listen for a while?" "Not at all," she said, her smile widening. For the next half hour, Daniel stood there, captivated by the melodies she conjured. Each note seemed to carry a story, a depth of feeling that resonated with him in a way he couldn't explain. As the days passed, Daniel began to make it a point to stop by Isabel's corner whenever he could. He would chat with her between songs, learning snippets about her life. She spoke sparingly about her struggles but often shared her love for music and her dreams of becoming a professional composer. "Why don't you audition for something bigger?" Daniel asked one day, genuinely puzzled. Isabel hesitated, her eyes flickering with unease. "It's complicated," she said, brushing the question aside. Her reluctance only fueled Daniel's curiosity. He decided to delve deeper into her story, feeling a growing desire to help her. What he didn't know was that his decision to do so would soon uncover truths that would leave him, and the entire city, stunned. One evening, after Isabel had packed up her guitar and left, Daniel approached a nearby vendor who had been watching her for months. "She's here every day," Daniel began. "Do you know much about her?" The vendor, a middle-aged man named Joe, nodded solemnly. "She's a kind soul, never causes trouble, but you can tell she's been through a lot. Works hard, though, doesn't take handouts, only what she earns from playing. Has she ever mentioned why she's out here?" Daniel pressed. Joe sighed. "She's got a family to take care of. From what I've heard, they're struggling, but that girl's got more heart than anyone I've ever met." Hearing this, Daniel felt a pang of guilt. For all his wealth and influence, he had never faced the kind of hardships Isabel seemed to endure daily. He resolved to learn more and find a way to support her, not out of pity, but out of admiration for her resilience. The following week, Daniel approached Isabel with a proposal. "I'd like to hear you play in a more comfortable setting," he said. "Would you join me for lunch? There's a piano at the restaurant I frequent, and I'd love to hear what you can do on it." Isabel hesitated. "I don't know. I wouldn't want to impose." "You wouldn't be," Daniel assured her. "It's just lunch. Think of it as an opportunity to showcase your talent to a different audience." Reluctantly, Isabel agreed. The next day, she arrived at the upscale restaurant, wearing a modest dress that spoke of her humble means. Daniel greeted her warmly and introduced her to the owner, who graciously allowed her to use the grand piano in the corner. When Isabel began to play, the entire room fell silent. Her fingers glided effortlessly across the keys, producing a melody so moving that several diners stopped eating to listen. By the time she finished, the room erupted in applause. Daniel was in awe. "You're remarkable," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. You belong in front of audiences who can truly appreciate what you bring to music. Isabel blushed but quickly deflected the compliment. It's just a passion of mine. Nothing extraordinary. After lunch, Daniel pressed Isabel further about her life. Slowly, she began to open up, revealing bits and pieces of her story. She spoke of her mother, who was battling a chronic illness, and her younger brother, who was in school but often struggled with basic needs. Isabel had dropped out of college to care for them, using her talent for music to make ends meet. But why not seek out scholarships or grants? Daniel asked, perplexed. Isabel hesitated before replying. There are reasons. Things about my family's past that complicate everything. Daniel didn't push further, sensing her discomfort, but his curiosity was piqued. Determined to help, he decided to investigate Isabel's background discreetly. What he discovered in the coming days would change everything he thought he knew about her, and about himself. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Isabel's story held layers she hadn't revealed. Her humility and resilience stood out in stark contrast to the hardships she described, and he was determined to understand her better. He began reaching out to his network, discreetly asking about available resources for struggling musicians, but at the same time, he started to dig deeper into Isabel's past. Through casual conversations and subtle inquiries, Daniel pieced together fragments of Isabel's life. She had grown up in a small town just outside the city. Her father had left when she was young, and her mother had raised her and her younger brother Peter alone. Life had always been a struggle, but things took a turn for the worse when her mother was diagnosed with a debilitating illness. Isabel had been attending a prestigious music academy on scholarship at the time. She had such a bright future, said one of her former instructors, when Daniel managed to track him down. But one day she stopped showing up. No explanation, no goodbye. It was heartbreaking. She had the kind of talent that could have taken her anywhere. Daniel's heart ached as he learned more. Isabel had sacrificed her dreams to support her family, taking on odd jobs and playing music on the streets to make ends meet. But one detail caught Daniel's attention. Several people mentioned that Isabel had once been in the public eye for reasons unrelated to music. Curiosity got the better of him, and Daniel asked Liam, a trusted private investigator, to look into Isabel's background. Liam was efficient, and within a few days, he returned with information that left Daniel speechless. You're not going to believe this, Liam said, handing Daniel a folder. Isabel isn't just a street musician, she's the daughter of Evelyn Harrison. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. Evelyn Harrison was a name that carried significant weight in the city's history. She had been a celebrated classical pianist who tragically disappeared from the public eye after her husband was implicated in a massive corporate scandal. The scandal had destroyed the family's reputation and forced them into obscurity. Evelyn Harrison? Daniel repeated, stunned. As in the Evelyn Harrison who played at the Royal Symphony Hall? The same, Liam confirmed. Isabel is her daughter. It seems that after her father's downfall, the family went through hell. Isabel has been keeping a low profile ever since. Daniel stared at the folder, his mind racing. Isabel's talent suddenly made sense. She had inherited her mother's gift, but her reluctance to pursue her dreams was now painfully clear. The weight of her family's tarnished name must have been crushing. The next time Daniel saw Isabel, he couldn't look at her the same way. She was sitting on her usual street corner, her fingers weaving a haunting melody that seemed to echo the struggles she had endured. When she finished, he approached her cautiously. Isabel, can we talk? He asked gently. She nodded, sensing his serious tone. They walked to a nearby cafe where Daniel hesitated before speaking. I've learned something about you, he began. About your family. Isabel's face instantly hardened. What do you mean? She asked, her voice wary. I know who your mother is, Daniel said softly. Evelyn Harrison. Isabel's hands clenched into fists, and her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger. How do you know that? Did you investigate me? I didn't mean to invade your privacy, Daniel said quickly. I wanted to understand why someone as talented as you was living the way you are. I didn't expect to find this. Isabel looked away, her jaw tight. I don't talk about my mother or my father for a reason. Their story is a painful one, and I don't want it to define me. Daniel nodded, respecting her boundaries. I understand. But Isabel, your talent is extraordinary. Your mother's legacy doesn't have to be a burden. It can be an inspiration. She shook her head, her voice trembling. You don't get it. People don't see the music. They see the scandal. My father's mistakes ruined everything for us. My mother gave up her career to protect us. And now I'm trying to keep what little dignity we have left. Daniel leaned forward, his tone sincere. What if I could help? Not out of pity, but because I believe in you. You deserve a chance to let the world hear your music. Not as Evelyn Harrison's daughter, but as Isabel the artist. Isabel hesitated, her eyes searching his for any hint of condescension. Why do you care so much? She asked quietly. Because I've been blind to what really matters for most of my life, Daniel admitted. I've spent years chasing money and power, and I've missed the beauty in the world around me. Your music reminded me of that beauty. Helping you isn't charity. It's my way of giving back. Isabel considered his words, the walls she had built around herself starting to crack. For the first time, she allowed herself to entertain the possibility of trusting someone outside her family. All right, she said finally. I'll let you help, but on one condition. This isn't about fixing me. It's about giving me the tools to stand on my own. Daniel smiled, relief washing over him. Deal. Daniel and Isabel's partnership began with small, deliberate steps. True to her word, Isabel wanted to remain in control of her narrative, refusing to let her identity as Evelyn Harrison's daughter overshadow her own talent. Daniel respected this and focused on empowering her in ways that aligned with her goals. The first thing Daniel did was introduce Isabel to a friend of his, Clara, who managed a small but reputable music venue in the city. Clara had a reputation for supporting rising talents and agreed to let Isabel perform at one of her open mic nights. Isabel hesitated at first, nervous about how her music would be received in a formal setting. It's not the same as playing on the street, she told Daniel as they walked toward the venue one evening. There's an intimacy to it out there. No expectations, no judgment. And yet you captivate everyone who passes by. Daniel replied with a reassuring smile. This is no different. They're here for the music, not the spectacle. That night, Isabel walked onto the small stage with trembling hands, her guitar strapped to her back. The audience was quiet but curious, drawn by her unassuming presence. As she began to play, the nervous energy melted away, replaced by the raw emotion in her voice. The haunting beauty of her melodies silenced the room, and by the time she finished, the audience erupted into applause. Daniel watched from the back of the room, his chest swelling with pride. He knew this was just the beginning. The performance sparked something in Isabel, a glimmer of belief in herself that had long been buried. Clara was impressed and invited her to return for future performances. The positive feedback gave Isabel the confidence to dream bigger. Daniel, meanwhile, helped Isabel create a portfolio of her music. He connected her with a recording studio where she could professionally record her songs. For the first time, Isabel heard her music come to life with pristine sound quality, and the experience was transformative. I never thought I'd hear my music like this, Isabel said as she listened to the playback of one of her songs. You deserve it, Daniel replied. The world deserves to hear it too. As Isabel's performances gained traction, word began to spread about the mysterious street musician with an extraordinary voice. Local bloggers and music enthusiasts started writing about her, and her social media following began to grow. Daniel had been careful to keep her connection to Evelyn Harrison under wraps, but the increased attention made it harder to maintain the secrecy. One evening, while Isabel was performing at Clara's venue, a journalist approached her after the show. Isabel, your music is incredible, the journalist said, holding out a recorder. Would you be willing to share your story for our publication? People would love to know more about you. Isabel hesitated, glancing at Daniel, who stood nearby. He gave her a subtle nod, signaling that the decision was hers. I'd be happy to talk about my music, she replied carefully, but I prefer to keep my personal life private. The journalist respected her wishes and focused the article solely on Isabel's artistry. The piece painted her as a rising star with a unique voice and a humble background, avoiding any mention of her family history. Despite their efforts, it wasn't long before someone made the connection between Isabel and Evelyn Harrison. A former Music Academy classmate recognized her in one of the articles and shared her identity on social media. The revelation spread like wildfire, and soon Isabel found herself at the center of a media frenzy. Isabel was furious when she saw the headlines. Street musician turns out to be Evelyn Harrison's daughter, screamed one article. The hidden legacy of a classical music prodigy, read another. I didn't want this, Isabel said, pacing back and forth in her small apartment. I wanted people to see me for who I am, not who my mother was. Daniel tried to calm her. This doesn't change who you are, Isabel. If anything, it makes your journey even more inspiring. You've carved your own path despite everything. But now people will think I'm just riding on her coattails, Isabel said, her voice trembling. Then prove them wrong, Daniel said firmly. Let your music speak for itself. Show them that you're more than just a name. With Daniel's support, Isabel decided to address the media frenzy head-on. She agreed to an exclusive interview with a trusted journalist to set the record straight. In the interview, she spoke candidly about her mother's sacrifices and her father's mistakes, emphasizing how she had fought to create a life for herself and her brother. My mother gave up everything to protect us, Isabel said, her voice steady. I owe my resilience to her, but my music is my own. It's how I've survived, and how I've found joy in the darkest times. The interview humanized Isabel, earning her admiration from the public. People saw her not as a shadow of Evelyn Harrison, but as a talented musician with a story of perseverance and strength. The city, captivated by Isabel's journey, rallied around her. Offers for gigs and collaborations poured in, and Isabel found herself performing at larger venues. She remained grounded, always remembering the struggles that had shaped her. Daniel, meanwhile, marveled at her strength. You're incredible, Isabel, he said after one of her sold-out performances. You've turned every obstacle into an opportunity. I couldn't have done it without you, Isabel admitted. You gave me a chance when no one else would. Sometimes all we need is a little faith, Daniel replied. As Isabel's star continued to rise, the city learned not just of her talent, but also of the transformative power of kindness and connection. Daniel had set out to help her, but in the process, Isabel had changed his life too. Isabel's rapid rise to prominence sparked a chain reaction across the city. Her story, filled with resilience and courage, inspired countless individuals to examine their own lives and the people around them. What began as a chance encounter between a wealthy businessman and a street musician had grown into something much larger, a movement fueled by compassion, determination, and the undeniable power of music. The story of Isabel, the mysterious street musician turned rising star, was now a symbol of hope. As her music gained popularity, so too did her message. Isabel often spoke of the importance of kindness and understanding, highlighting how Daniel's simple act of taking notice had transformed her life. One day, after a performance in a public square, a young woman approached Isabel with tears in her eyes. Your music saved me, she said, her voice trembling. I've been struggling with so much, but hearing your story gave me hope that things can get better. Isabel embraced her and said, You're stronger than you think. Never forget that your story matters too. Similar encounters became frequent. People from all walks of life found inspiration in Isabel's journey, and her music became a soundtrack for their own paths to healing and self-discovery. As Isabel's star rose, Daniel's life also underwent a profound transformation. His initial act of curiosity had opened a door not just for Isabel, but for himself. The rigid, materialistic existence he once led began to shift into something more meaningful. Daniel found himself spending less time in boardrooms and more time volunteering at shelters and community centers. Inspired by Isabel, he started an initiative within his company to fund creative projects for underprivileged youth. One day, while visiting a community center where he'd funded music lessons, Daniel was approached by a boy holding a battered violin. Mr. Porter, the boy said shyly, I wanted to say thank you. I've always wanted to play music, and now I can because of you. Daniel felt his heart swell. You don't have to thank me, he said. Just promise me you'll keep playing. Music has a way of changing the world. As Isabel's story spread, journalists dug deeper into her past, uncovering the incredible sacrifices she had made for her family. It came to light that Isabel had spent years taking care of her younger brother, Leo, after their mother's tragic passing. Leo, now a bright college student studying architecture, spoke publicly about Isabel's role in his life. My sister gave up everything for me, Leo said in an interview. She worked multiple jobs, put her dreams on hold, and never once complained. Everything I have today is because of her. The revelation struck a chord with people across the city. Isabel's selflessness and determination became a rallying cry for those facing their own struggles. She wasn't just a talented musician, she was a hero. While Isabel's connection to her mother, Evelyn Harrison, had already made waves, another unexpected revelation left the city in awe. During a televised interview, Isabel casually mentioned a mysterious benefactor who had secretly supported her during her toughest times. When pressed for details, Isabel smiled and said, "I don't know who they are. I only know that they believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." After the interview aired, a woman named Margaret came forward, revealing that she had been anonymously funding Isabel's living expenses for years. Margaret, a former student of Evelyn Harrison, had recognized Isabel's potential early on and wanted to honor Evelyn's legacy by supporting her daughter. "I never wanted recognition," Margaret explained in an emotional press conference. "I just wanted to give Isabel the chance to shine. She's done far more with that chance than I ever imagined." The revelation added another layer to Isabel's story, showing how a network of unseen kindness had played a role in her journey. With their lives intertwined in unexpected ways, Isabel and Daniel decided to collaborate on a project that would benefit the community. They launched the Harmony Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting young artists and musicians from underprivileged backgrounds. The initiative provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and performance opportunities, creating a platform for others to find their voices, just as Isabel had found hers. During the launch event, Isabel performed alongside some of the young musicians supported by the program. Daniel, standing in the audience, felt a profound sense of fulfillment as he watched the next generation of talent flourish. The ripple effect of Isabel's story continued to spread. People across the city were inspired to connect with their communities, extend kindness to strangers, and nurture the hidden talents of those around them. Isabel and Daniel became unlikely ambassadors of hope, proving that even the smallest acts of compassion could ignite a revolution of change. As the sun set over the city, casting a warm glow over its bustling streets, Isabel performed one of her original songs in a crowded park. Her voice, rich with emotion, carried through the air, weaving a tapestry of connection and resilience. And as the final notes faded, the crowd erupted into applause, not just for Isabel, but for the power of music, kindness, and the unexpected ways lives can intertwine to create something extraordinary. Amid the whirlwind of media attention and public admiration, Isabel found herself yearning for quiet moments to reflect. Her life had transformed overnight, and while she was grateful for every opportunity, she couldn't ignore the weight of her new reality. One evening, after a particularly exhausting charity event, Isabel returned to the small apartment she still shared with Leo. Despite her growing fame, she hadn't yet moved to a more luxurious place, choosing instead to stay grounded and close to her roots. Leo was waiting for her with a grin. "Big night, sis. You were amazing as always." Isabel dropped her bag and slumped onto the couch. "Thanks, but I feel like I've been running on fumes." She glanced at her brother. "How was your day?" Leo's smile faltered for a moment. "It was fine, just a lot of assignments. You know how it is." Isabel studied his face. "Leo, what's going on? You've been acting distracted lately." After a pause, Leo sighed. "It's nothing, just some stress with school. Don't worry about me, okay?" Isabel wasn't convinced, but she decided not to press further. She trusted Leo to come to her when he was ready. The next morning, Isabel found a letter slipped under their door. The handwriting was unfamiliar, and the envelope was unmarked. Curious, she opened it and began reading. "Dear Isabel, your story has inspired countless people, including me. But there's something you don't know, something that might change everything. Meet me at 6 p.m. at Harmony Cafe. I'll explain everything there. A friend." The cryptic message sent a shiver down Isabel's spine. She debated whether to go, unsure if she could trust the sender, but her curiosity won out. That evening, Isabel arrived at Harmony Cafe, a cozy spot she often visited during her street musician days. She scanned the room, wondering who her mysterious friend could be. A woman in her late 40s approached her. She had kind eyes but carried an air of nervousness. "Isabel?" "Yes," Isabel replied cautiously. The woman extended her hand. "My name is Claire. I knew your mother." Over coffee, Claire revealed a stunning secret. Evelyn Harrison, Isabel's mother, had once been the lead violinist in an elite orchestra, but her career had been cut short by a scandal involving a powerful patron of the arts. The man, angered by Evelyn's refusal to conform to his demands, had used his influence to tarnish her reputation. "I worked with your mother during those years," Claire explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "She was the most talented musician I'd ever met, but the industry turned its back on her. She tried to fight back, but she also had you and Leo to think about." Isabel felt a lump in her throat. She had always known her mother was talented, but she never knew the full extent of her sacrifice. Claire continued, "Your mother used to say that her dreams lived on through you and Leo. She taught you music because she wanted you to have what was taken from her." The revelation hit Isabel like a wave. Her mother's passion, her tireless dedication, it had all been for her children. As Claire shared more stories about Evelyn, Isabel's resolve deepened. She realized that her success wasn't just hers, it was her mother's too. Everything she had achieved was a continuation of Evelyn's dreams, proof that her mother's spirit hadn't been silenced. But Claire wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," she said, pulling a faded envelope from her bag. "Your mother wrote this before she passed. She asked me to give it to you when the time was right." With trembling hands, Isabel opened the letter. "My dearest Isabel, if you're reading this, it means you found your way in the world, just as I always knew you would. I'm so proud of you, my love. You are my greatest masterpiece, and I know you'll use your gift to bring light to others. Remember, no matter what life throws at you, your music has the power to heal, not just others, but yourself. Keep playing, Isabel. The world needs your song." Tears streamed down Isabel's face as she finished reading. In that moment, she felt her mother's presence more strongly than ever, as if Evelyn was right there, guiding her forward. The next day, Isabel decided to share her mother's story with the world. In an emotional interview, she spoke about Evelyn's struggles and sacrifices, her love for music, and her unyielding determination to protect her children. The city was captivated. Evelyn Harrison, once a forgotten name, was now celebrated as a hero. Her legacy was restored, not just through Isabel's words, but through her music, which now carried an even deeper meaning. Daniel, who had been following Isabel's journey closely, reached out to her after the interview. "Your mother's story is incredible," he said. "She would be so proud of you, Isabel." Isabel smiled through her tears. "She's the reason I am who I am. And now, I want to make sure her story inspires others the way she inspired me." Isabel and Daniel decided to expand the Harmony Initiative to include a program honoring Evelyn's legacy. The initiative would provide scholarships for aspiring musicians, ensuring that no one's talent would go unnoticed or unappreciated. During the launch event, Isabel performed one of her mother's original compositions, a piece that had never been heard by the public. As the hauntingly beautiful melody filled the room, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The performance wasn't just a tribute, it was a promise. Isabel vowed to carry her mother's dream forward, ensuring that Evelyn's music would continue to touch hearts for generations to come. After the public revelation of Evelyn's story, Isabel found herself overwhelmed by an outpouring of love and support from people across the city and beyond. Letters poured in from strangers who resonated with her mother's struggles, sharing their own stories of resilience and sacrifice. For Isabel, each letter was a reminder that her journey wasn't hers alone. She represented countless others who had faced adversity, and her music had become a voice for those who felt unheard. One afternoon, Isabel decided to visit the spot where it all began, the corner outside the bustling cafe where she had spent so many hours playing her violin. She stood in the familiar space, her violin case at her feet, and began to play a piece her mother had composed. The melody was raw and full of emotion, weaving together sorrow, hope, and triumph. People gathered just as they had before, but this time, they recognized her. Whispers filled the air. "Is that Isabel Harrison? She's even more incredible in person." The crowd grew, and by the time she finished the piece, dozens of people were applauding. Isabel smiled, grateful for their support, but what touched her most was a little girl clutching a tiny violin, her eyes wide with admiration. "You're my hero," the girl said shyly. Kneeling down, Isabel said, "Keep playing, and one day, you'll be someone else's hero." A few weeks later, Isabel received a package from a law firm. Inside was an old notebook filled with handwritten sheet music and notes. It belonged to her mother. Attached was a letter from the firm explaining that the notebook had been kept by a former orchestra member who wanted to honor Evelyn's memory, but hadn't known how. After hearing Isabel's story, they decided it was time to pass it on. Isabel spent hours poring over the pages, marveling at the depth of her mother's artistry. It was like discovering a new piece of Evelyn with every note. Inspired by the notebook, Isabel decided to organize a special concert to honor her mother's legacy. The event would feature her mother's unpublished works, performed by a full orchestra. Daniel, always supportive, helped her bring the vision to life. He reached out to his vast network, ensuring that the concert would be a grand success. The night of the performance, the venue was packed. Among the audience were people from all walks of life, fellow musicians, community members, and even some of Evelyn's former colleagues. Isabel took the stage, her heart pounding with emotion. As she lifted her violin, she looked up as if to say, "This is for you, Mom." The music filled the room, each note a testament to Evelyn's brilliance and Isabel's devotion. By the end of the performance, the audience was on their feet, tears streaming down many faces. After the concert, Daniel approached Isabel with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," he began. "Your story, your mother's story, it needs to reach more people." "What do you mean?" Isabel asked. "Let's create a documentary," Daniel said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "We can capture everything, your journey, your mother's legacy, and the impact of your music." Isabel hesitated. "I don't know. It feels so personal." "Exactly," Daniel said gently. "That's what makes it powerful. You've already touched so many lives. This could inspire millions." After some consideration, Isabel agreed. The documentary, titled Strings of Resilience, was a labor of love. It chronicled Isabel's rise from a street musician to a celebrated artist, weaving in Evelyn's story and the profound bond between mother and daughter. The filming process was both cathartic and challenging for Isabel. Revisiting painful memories was difficult, but it also allowed her to reflect on how far she had come. When the documentary premiered, it was met with critical acclaim. Viewers were moved by the raw honesty of the story and the stunning visuals that brought Evelyn's compositions to life. The impact of Strings of Resilience went beyond Isabel's expectations. Music programs in underserved communities saw a surge in support, inspired by her advocacy. The Harmony Initiative expanded its reach, partnering with schools and organizations worldwide to nurture young talent. Isabel became a global ambassador for music education, using her platform to fight for accessibility and equality in the arts. Through it all, Isabel stayed grounded. She continued to visit the cafe, sometimes playing her violin and sometimes just sitting quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought her there. Years later, Isabel received an invitation to perform at the same prestigious orchestra that had once shunned her mother. It was a bittersweet moment, but Isabel accepted, knowing that Evelyn's dream had come full circle. The performance was nothing short of magical. Isabel played one of her mother's pieces, and as the final note lingered in the air, she felt a profound sense of peace. Afterward, she addressed the audience. "This isn't just my success," she said. "It's my mother's. Her music lives on, not just in me, but in every person who has been touched by her story." The crowd erupted in applause, but Isabel didn't hear it. In her heart, she was listening to the quiet approval of Evelyn, whose love and sacrifice had made everything possible. Isabel's story became a legend, not just in her city, but around the world. She proved that music wasn't just an art form. It was a bridge, connecting the past to the present and strangers to each other. Through her journey, Isabel showed that kindness and perseverance could turn even the simplest notes into a symphony of hope and inspiration. With the overwhelming success of Strings of Resilience and the revival of her mother's legacy, Isabel felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. However, she knew her journey wasn't over. The story of her life and her mother's sacrifices was just the beginning of a mission that extended far beyond her own achievements. Using the proceeds from the documentary and her performances, Isabel founded the Evelyn Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting young, underprivileged musicians. The foundation provided scholarships, access to instruments, and mentorship programs for children who showed promise but lacked resources. "It's what my mother would have wanted," Isabel explained during the foundation's launch event. She believed in the transformative power of music, and now, through this foundation, Her belief can change lives. Daniel, who had become an integral part of Isabel's life, joined the Foundation's board as a strategic advisor. His experience and connections proved invaluable in expanding the Foundation's reach. Isabel took a hands-on approach, visiting schools and community centers to teach music workshops. She shared not just technical skills but also her story, encouraging students to find their voice and believe in their potential. One of her mentees, a shy girl named Maria, reminded Isabel of herself. Maria had a natural talent for the violin but lacked confidence. Isabel worked closely with her, providing not only lessons but also encouragement. Months later, Maria performed at one of the Foundation's recitals. Her rendition of one of Evelyn's compositions left the audience in tears. Isabel watched from the wings, her heart swelling with pride. "You're going to do amazing things," Isabel told Maria afterward. "Only because you believed in me," Maria replied. As Isabel's professional life flourished, so did her relationship with Daniel. Their bond had grown from friendship to a deep, mutual understanding and respect. One evening, after a successful Foundation gala, Daniel invited Isabel for a quiet walk by the waterfront. The city lights reflected on the water, creating a serene backdrop. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Isabel said, looking out at the view. "Neither did I," Daniel replied. "But meeting you changed everything for me. Your passion, your resilience, you've taught me more than I ever thought possible." Isabel turned to face him, her heart racing as she noticed the nervousness in his expression. Daniel pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. "Isabel, you've shown me what it means to truly care about something bigger than myself. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, supporting you and building something extraordinary together. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Isabel's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Daniel. 1,000 times yes." News of Isabel and Daniel's engagement spread quickly, delighting the city that had embraced their journey. The announcement was met with warm wishes and excitement, solidifying their status as a beloved couple. Their wedding was a celebration of love and community, held in the very park where Isabel had performed for years. Music filled the air, blending her mother's compositions with her own original works. Maria and other young musicians from the Foundation performed during the ceremony, creating an atmosphere of pure joy. As Isabel walked down the aisle, she carried her mother's violin in one hand, a symbolic gesture of the legacy that had brought her to that moment. As life settled into a new rhythm, Isabel received an unexpected visit from an elderly man named Arthur. He introduced himself as a close friend of Evelyn's from her early career. "I saw your documentary," Arthur said. "Your mother was a remarkable woman, and I knew her well, but there's something you should know about her past, something she never told anyone." Intrigued, Isabel invited him to share more. Arthur revealed that Evelyn had once been offered a prestigious position in a world-renowned orchestra. However, she had turned it down to care for Isabel, choosing motherhood over her dreams. "She didn't see it as a sacrifice," Arthur explained. "She always said that you were her greatest masterpiece." The revelation brought Isabel to tears. Her mother's love had been the foundation of everything she had achieved, and knowing this only deepened her gratitude. Years later, Isabel stood on the stage of the city's largest concert hall, ready to debut a new composition titled Evelyn's Symphony. The piece was a tribute to her mother's life, capturing the highs and lows, the struggles and triumphs, and the unwavering love that had defined her legacy. As the orchestra began to play, the audience was transported into Evelyn's world. The music was hauntingly beautiful, weaving a tapestry of emotion that resonated deeply with everyone present. When the final note faded, the hall erupted in applause. Isabel stood center stage, her heart full as she looked out at the audience. "This is not just a performance," she said, addressing the crowd. "It's a reminder that even the quietest sacrifices can create the loudest echoes. My mother's story is proof that love, resilience, and kindness can change the world." Isabel's life became a testament to her mother's values. Through her music, her foundation, and her unwavering dedication to others, she continued to honor Evelyn's memory. The city, once captivated by a young street musician, now celebrated a woman who had become a symbol of hope and inspiration. Isabel's story reminded everyone that behind every hardship lies the potential for greatness, and behind every act of kindness lies the power to transform lives. And so the music played on, an unending symphony of love, perseverance, and the extraordinary bond between a mother and her child. Isabel's fame extended far beyond her city. Her story, music, and philanthropy captured the hearts of people worldwide. Invitations to perform in prestigious venues poured in, but Isabel remained grounded, always reminding herself of where she came from and the journey that brought her here. One of the most significant milestones in Isabel's career was her debut at Carnegie Hall. The invitation came as both an honor and a challenge. She decided that her performance would not only showcase her musical prowess, but also honor her mother's legacy and the countless others who had supported her along the way. The evening was nothing short of magical. The program featured a mix of her mother's compositions, her own original works, and a special collaboration with young musicians from the Evelyn Foundation. As Isabel took her final bow, the standing ovation lasted for what felt like an eternity. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the crowd, a blend of strangers and familiar faces, all united by the music. "This is for everyone who has ever felt unseen," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Music gave me a voice when I had none. Tonight, I hope it inspires you to find your own." The success of her Carnegie Hall performance catapulted Isabel to international stardom. She used her platform to advocate for greater accessibility to music education, particularly for underprivileged communities. Through the Evelyn Foundation, she launched programs in cities across the globe, partnering with local organizations to provide instruments, lessons, and performance opportunities for aspiring musicians. Isabel also became a vocal advocate for the mental health of artists. Drawing from her own experiences, she emphasized the importance of balancing passion with self-care. "Creativity thrives when we nurture the person behind the art," she said during a keynote speech at an international music conference. "Let's create a world where artists don't have to choose between their well-being and their craft." During one of her foundation events, a shy, unassuming boy named Liam caught Isabel's attention. He was a young violinist who reminded her of herself in her early years. Talented, passionate, but uncertain of his place in the world. Liam's performance at the event left everyone speechless. His skill was extraordinary, and Isabel immediately recognized his potential. She took him under her wing, providing mentorship and opportunities that changed his life. Unbeknownst to Isabel, Liam was not just any young musician. He was an orphan whose life had been shaped by tragedy and resilience. His parents had been musicians themselves, but their untimely death had left him in foster care. Liam's story soon became intertwined with Isabel's, creating a powerful narrative of how kindness and opportunity can transform lives. Together, they performed at events, inspiring audiences with their shared journey. One day, as Isabel and Liam were rehearsing, he hesitated before speaking. "Miss Isabel, I found something you might want to see," he said, handing her an old, worn notebook. "This belonged to my parents," he explained. "They were musicians too, and they wrote down everything: music, thoughts, dreams. I think there's something in here about your mother." Isabel's hands trembled as she opened the notebook. Inside, she found an entry describing a chance encounter between Evelyn and Liam's parents. They spoke about starting a program to help young musicians. Isabel read aloud. They said they wanted to create a legacy of opportunity, one note at a time. Tears filled her eyes as she realized the profound connection between their stories. Liam's parents had shared the same dream as her mother, a dream that Isabel was now bringing to life. News of the connection between Isabel and Liam spread like wildfire, captivating the hearts of people across the city. The mayor announced plans to honor both Evelyn and Isabel's contributions to the arts by renaming a prominent cultural center after them. At the unveiling ceremony, Isabel stood beside Liam, surrounded by supporters, friends, and fellow musicians. The newly named Evelyn and Isabel Art Center stood as a testament to their shared vision of a world where music could change lives. "This center isn't just a building," Isabel said during her speech. "It's a promise that no dream is too big and no voice is too small. Together, we can create a symphony of hope." Despite her international success, Isabel never forgot the park where her journey began. She often returned to perform there, drawing crowds that included both longtime supporters and curious newcomers. One evening, during a particularly intimate performance, Isabel noticed a familiar figure in the crowd. It was Daniel, the wealthy man who had first taken an interest in her music. After the performance, he approached her with a warm smile. "You've come so far, Isabel," he said, "and I owe much of it to you," she replied. "You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Thank you." Daniel shook his head. "You did this, Isabel. I just gave you the keys. You unlocked the door." Years later, Isabel's influence continued to ripple through the world. Liam grew into a celebrated musician in his own right, often crediting Isabel and her foundation for his success. The Evelyn and Isabel Arts Center became a hub of creativity, hosting concerts, workshops, and exhibitions that celebrated the transformative power of art. Isabel's music, advocacy, and mentorship left an indelible mark on the lives of countless individuals. Through her journey, she proved that even the smallest acts of kindness can spark a chain reaction of change. As she stood on stage during the center's 10th anniversary celebration, Isabel reflected on everything that had led her to that moment. "Music connects us," she said, addressing the audience. "It tells our stories, bridges our differences, and reminds us of our shared humanity. Let's keep playing, keep creating, and keep believing in the power of kindness." The audience erupted into applause as Isabel picked up her violin, ready to play the opening notes of a piece she had written for her mother. And so the music played on, carrying with it the echoes of love, resilience, and the extraordinary bond between a mother and her child, now shared with the world. After the emotional unveiling of the Evelyn and Isabel Arts Center, Isabel found herself drawn deeper into the purpose behind her music. It wasn't just about playing or performing anymore. It was about healing, not only herself but others who had been through struggles as profound as hers. One evening, while organizing her mother's belongings, Isabel found a hidden folder of unpublished compositions. These pieces, written during Evelyn's most challenging years, were raw, deeply emotional, and unlike anything Isabel had ever played. Determined to honor her mother's unspoken story, Isabel decided to perform these pieces at an intimate concert. The event was held in the small park where Isabel had once played her violin for passers-by. It was a symbolic return to her roots. Despite her fame, Isabel insisted on a modest setup, with no tickets or fancy promotions. When she began playing her mother's compositions, the crowd was mesmerized. The music was hauntingly beautiful, filled with a depth that spoke of struggle, hope, and resilience. By the end of the concert, tears were streaming down faces, including Isabel's. "She poured her heart into these notes," Isabel said, her voice trembling. "Through them, I've come to understand her more deeply, and I hope they remind you of the strength we all carry within us." Inspired by her mother's compositions, Isabel launched a global initiative through the Evelyn Foundation, called Notes of Healing. The program brought music therapy to hospitals, shelters, and rehabilitation centers. Isabel herself visited many of these locations, playing for patients and leading workshops to help people express their emotions through music. In one particularly touching moment, Isabel met a young girl named Mia, who had been hospitalized after surviving a traumatic accident. Mia, who had once loved music, had stopped playing altogether. Isabel spent hours with Mia, gently encouraging her to pick up her flute again. Slowly, Mia began to play, her notes shaky but determined. Months later, Isabel received a video of Mia performing confidently in a school recital. The caption read, "Thank you for reminding me that music can heal." As Isabel's reputation grew, artists from around the world reached out, eager to collaborate with her. Among them was a renowned conductor who invited Isabel to be part of a world tour featuring her original compositions alongside her mother's. The tour became a celebration of their shared journey, blending Evelyn's raw emotional works with Isabel's contemporary pieces. Each performance was met with standing ovations, as audiences connected deeply with the story behind the music. During one performance in Vienna, Isabel introduced a new piece titled Threads of Time. This piece, she explained, is about the invisible threads that connect us to our past, our present, and our future. For me, those threads are my mother, my music, and every person who has believed in me. Back in her city, Isabel's contributions were impossible to ignore. The mayor organized a citywide celebration in her honor, declaring a day as Isabel Laurent Day. The event featured performances by young musicians who had benefited from the Evelyn Foundation, including Liam, who now mentored other budding artists. Isabel used the platform to highlight the importance of community, urging everyone to recognize the talents and potential within their own neighborhoods. "We all have a part to play," she said. "Let's create a world where no dream goes unnoticed, where no talent is overlooked." Amidst her growing acclaim, Isabel received an unexpected visitor, Daniel, the man who had first noticed her playing on the street. "I just wanted to thank you," Daniel said, his voice filled with emotion. "You've done so much for this city, for this world, and to think it all started with a chance encounter." Isabel smiled warmly. "No, Daniel, it started because you took a chance on me. You reminded me that even in the darkest times there's always someone willing to help." Daniel handed her an envelope. Inside was a personal letter expressing his gratitude, along with a donation to the Evelyn Foundation. "I believe in what you're doing," he said, "and I want to be part of it." One day, Isabel visited the small apartment where she and her mother had lived during their toughest times. The building was now abandoned, but the memories were vivid. Standing in the empty living room, Isabel could almost hear the echo of her mother's voice, encouraging her to practice just one more scale, one more piece. She sat on the floor and began to play her violin, letting the notes fill the space that had once been her sanctuary. When she finished, she whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Isabel's journey was far from over. She knew there were more stories to tell, more lives to touch, and more music to create. Through her foundation, her performances, and her unshakable belief in the power of music, Isabel continued to inspire others to dream, persevere, and believe in the transformative power of kindness. Her legacy, like her music, resonated far and wide, proving that one person's passion can indeed change the world. As the years went by, Isabel's life and work became an enduring symbol of resilience, creativity, and compassion. Her story inspired countless individuals across the world, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could have the most profound impact. Isabel's foundation, the Evelyn Foundation, expanded into a global movement. Chapters were opened in cities worldwide, each dedicated to nurturing the arts, supporting struggling families, and providing opportunities to talented individuals from underprivileged backgrounds. One of the most impactful initiatives was the annual Evelyn Music Fellowship. The program granted full scholarships to young musicians, enabling them to pursue their dreams without the burden of financial constraints. Many of these fellows went on to achieve extraordinary success, attributing their breakthroughs to the opportunities Isabel's foundation had given them. During a gala event celebrating the foundation's 10th anniversary, Isabel delivered a heartfelt speech. "When my mother and I struggled to make ends meet, I never imagined that one day I'd be in a position to help others. But here we are, proving that no dream is too big, and no obstacle is too great when we believe in one another." The audience erupted in applause, many of them former fellows who had now returned as mentors, donors, and advocates. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Isabel also found personal joy in unexpected places. After years of dedicating herself to her career in philanthropy, she met someone who shared her passion for music and community. Nathan, a fellow musician and philanthropist, had been captivated by Isabel's story and reached out to collaborate on a charity concert. What began as a professional relationship blossomed into something deeper. Nathan's gentle nature and unwavering support helped Isabel balance the demands of her public life with the need for personal happiness. Their relationship became a partnership, not only in life, but also in their shared mission. Together, they organized concerts, workshops, and events that further amplified their impact. In a private ceremony surrounded by close friends and family, Isabel and Nathan married. The event was simple but filled with love, featuring performances by children from the Evelyn Foundation. Isabel's vows reflected her journey. "Through music, I found my voice. Through this journey, I found my purpose. And through you, I've found my forever harmony." Years after Isabel had first played her violin on the street, the city decided to honor her legacy in a way that would last forever. The small park where she had once performed was renamed Isabelle Laurent Park. A bronze statue of Isabel, holding her violin and surrounded by children, was unveiled as a tribute to her contributions. At the unveiling ceremony, the mayor spoke passionately. "Isabelle Laurent showed us that greatness doesn't start in boardrooms or on stages. It starts in the hearts of those who dare to dream even in the face of adversity. Her story is a testament to the power of community, compassion, and creativity. As Isabel stood before the statue, surrounded by people whose lives she had touched, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She stepped forward to speak, her voice steady, but filled with emotion. "This park was once my stage, a place where I found hope in the darkest of times. It means the world to me that it will now serve as a place of inspiration for others. Thank you for believing in the power of art and the potential of every individual." Months after the park dedication, Isabel received an unexpected visitor, Daniel's grandson, Matthew. A young man in his 20s, Matthew had grown up hearing stories about his grandfather's fateful encounter with Isabel. "My grandfather always said you were the most inspiring person he'd ever met," Matthew said, handing Isabel a letter from Daniel. In the letter, Daniel expressed his pride in seeing Isabel fulfill her potential and transform the lives of others. "I always knew there was something extraordinary about you, Isabel. Watching you bloom has been one of the greatest joys of my life. Thank you for letting me be part of your story." The letter brought Isabel to tears, a reminder of the pivotal role Daniel had played in her life. She later invited Matthew to join the Evelyn Foundation as a youth ambassador, ensuring that Daniel's legacy continued alongside hers. Isabel continued to compose and perform, her music evolving with her life experiences. Each piece she created carried a piece of her journey, a note of struggle, a chord of hope, and a melody of triumph. Her most famous composition, Evelyn's Lullaby, became a universal anthem of love and resilience. It was performed at concerts, weddings, and even protests, uniting people across divides. One evening, while attending a performance of her work at a renowned concert hall, Isabel noticed something that took her breath away. Among the audience were people from all walks of life, children she had mentored, fellows from her foundation, and even strangers holding candles, signifying the light her music had brought into their lives. As Isabel reflected on her journey, she realized that her greatest achievement wasn't the fame, the awards, or even the foundation. It was the connections she had forged, the lives she had touched, and the hope she had inspired. Sitting in her music room one evening, surrounded by photos, awards, and letters of gratitude, Isabel picked up her violin and began to play. The notes flowed freely, a symphony of her life, one that began with a young girl on a street corner and grew into a legacy that spanned the world. Her final thought as she played, "Every life has a melody. All it takes is someone to stop and listen." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Click on the video appearing now to explore another narrative that will touch your heart and ignite your soul. See you in the next story. See you in the next story. See you in the next story.